Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumo and it's great to be on the show. Well, you caught me reading this fascinating book, which I'm going to introduce to you much later, but let's do a bit of reading. Set your mind loose, if I may use that expression, and start to imagine, because this is what this author is asking us to do right here. Come along with me. If you live or have lived in Nigeria, okay, I would like you to take 30 seconds to imagine what the country will be like with no police killings, no jungle justice, no burning of thieves in the streets, no stripping of offenders, no harassment of bus drivers for cola, no harassment for carrying afro, no shooting or harassment because you are protesting for Biafra or your incarcerated leader. Now, try and be a bit more ambitious for the next 30 seconds and imagine again what the country will be like if everyone had the right to health and meaningful access to healthcare. If no matter your ailment, you are guaranteed access to adequate medical facilities regardless of your financial capacity. Now imagine if everyone had access to quality education and housing and work. You can stop imagining now and we can instead live it. This book is a call to national human rights knowledge, a call to modern human rights culture, a call to a human rights revolution. Now you must have heard people talk about Nigeria. Nigeria can be a very confounding, very confusing place. The contradiction, so much potential, yet the outcome. You're wondering, why are we like this? You have brilliant people, intelligent people, successful people, and yet the country is the way it is. Nobody's happy about the way Nigeria is right now. I mean, we can all be happy in terms of, the potential and all that, but we all know Nigeria can be a lot more than, it is right now. So people tell you, the problem of Nigeria is tribalism. The problem of Nigeria is bigotry. The problem of Nigeria is politicians. The problem of Nigeria is the business people. The problem of Nigeria is every Nigerian. The problem of Nigeria is this and that. We all hear all these things. And, I mean, everybody is right in a way, depending on how you're looking at it. But this author, our guest author for today, challenges us to look at Nigeria from a very interesting perspective. It challenges us to look at the problem of Nigeria and find its solutions from the perspective of human rights. Wow, if you think about it, human rights. It says, look at Nigeria from the perspective of human rights and things begin to change. It challenges the politicians and the leaders and everybody to begin to look at Nigeria through the lens or the lenses of human rights. Well, we call him Dr. Allwell. I'll leave his surname as a mystery for now. In a few seconds, they're going to get to meet with him. But I can assure you, it's a famous surname, and his father is famous. But he's a distinguished PhD holder in the field of human rights, and he lectures and teaches in Europe on this particular subject, and therefore is very, very qualified to talk about human rights. And of course, considering his family's pedigree, his family background, he knows or has experienced one or two things about human rights. So let's get to meet with our special guest, our author for today, and then enjoy the conversation we had with him.
Allwell Uwazuruike is a senior lecturer in law at the University of Central Lancashire, UK, and an author. Allwell is the son of leader of the movement for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, Masab, Ralph Uwazuruike. He is a co-founder of Afritondo, a media platform for African writers. Allwell has a PhD in human rights law and is a barrister of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He has published and presented several papers on the subject of human rights at major international conferences across the globe. Allwell joins Channel's book club to discuss his book, The Dogs and the Baboons.
Allwell, nice to have you on Channel's book club. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Conley. Thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here.
So many things to discuss with you, Allwell. Your book is fantastic. I wish the print size was a bit bigger, because of this. But it's loaded. It's a loaded book. It got me thinking. It got me worried. Not worried in a positive way. Worried to the extent that I'm just like, what? We have to do something about this situation in this country. Human rights. I've always said, when I hear people analyzing the problems of Nigeria, try to propound solutions and all that, I've always said, let's even start from having basic value for human life. And I think that's what your book is about to a large extent. Isn't that so, Allwell?
Yes, pretty much what my book is about. Human rights as the starting point for solving the myriad of problems in Nigeria, basically.
Like I said, so much to talk about, but not just about your book, about you as a person. And of course, we've got to dabble a bit into your surname. But what inspired you to write this? What's the story behind this book? Let's get it introduced to viewers out there who are curious.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. What inspired me, I think, was the urge to connect with the people. So you see, I spent nearly 4 years doing a PhD on human rights in Africa. And I was obviously, coming across several resources, several materials. And the thing with academia is you just write, you publish, and those publications are just left to people in academia, the professors, the lecturers, and they are published in very expensive journals. But I felt like sharing my findings, sharing even my personal stories and experiences with the people that really mattered. And I think that was the main motivation behind writing the book. Writing a book in simple language for people, a book that people can read, enjoy, and also learn something from, and not just writing in those grandiloquent, pompous, styles that we write journals in.
We laymen struggle with, right? Well, well, you did. You made a success of that. I like the language you used in the book. You even used at some point street language in Lagos. I enjoyed that a lot. It helped me to be able to, get to that level and understand the subject a lot better. It is not disconnected from your surname, your family, your dad, is it? Because I read the intro of the book where you were trying to explain how your background, how some of the things you saw, some of the things you experienced growing up, seeing your dad, experience in his quest for human rights and freedom fighting, activism, and so on. Some of the things you saw, some of the things you experienced, how those helped you, shaped your thoughts with regards to human rights, the subject of this book, and of course, ultimately, consequently, this book. Can you explain that a bit?
Yes, certainly. I think my experiences growing up helped a lot because it meant that I had a first-hand experience of most of the things I talk about in the book. So it's not just the product of research or reading. I experienced police brutality. I experienced arrest without trial. I experienced deprivation of the right to life. The police killing Mazov members. We used to sleep in our house and you would wake up in the middle of the night inhaling tear gas. And we used to be on the run sometimes because the police was after our family. So I experienced a lot of, state victimization and brutality. And these are some of the experiences I share in the book. And I make the argument that, everybody's, rights need to be protected, those various rights at different levels. And I think, obviously, my family background spurred me in the first place to even study human rights, law, human rights, and also to maintain that interest, that curiosity about the violation of rights by the government.
Interesting. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. But let's talk about this subject. Your book is titled "The Dogs and the Baboons." Why that title?
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I played around with a few titles, but I settled for that one because of what I believe to be is a sort of allegory. It paints a certain picture, and I also wanted to leave it open to the reader to decide who the dogs and the baboons were. Particularly, it's a reference to a very popular quote by the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, in the run-up to the 2015 elections, when he did say that if what happened in the previous election was to repeat, that the dogs and the baboons would be soaked in blood. So I think dogs and baboons is also an allusion to what we can say is the tumultuous nature of politics and life in Nigeria. Sometimes violence, police brutality, and when the dogs and baboons clash, there's always a lot of blood to be soaked in, if I refer to the president's comment. So yeah, I think that was basically the idea behind that title.
I mean, most of us will certainly sway in that direction, since you left this for us to conclude on. That was my own conclusion before asking you. Okay, but it's a very serious subject you've raised here, the subject of human rights. I would like you to summarize your message, in this book. If you were to encapsulate it, what's your message? Everything you wrote in here, everything leads to something. What's your ultimate message? If you wanted people out there to just take that one thing, what's that?
Okay, I mean, I think it's a tough question because I have a lot of small messages in the book, and maybe one message may appeal more to someone, and another may appeal to someone else. But I think the ultimate message is that I believe that most of the problems in Nigeria can be solved using the spectrum of human rights. It's as simple as that. And that one key reason why loads of people are leaving the country, we talk about the Japa syndrome, is because they do not feel security of their life, their property, and even their general well-being in the country. It's not just, people leave very good jobs in Nigeria to go abroad. It's just because they don't feel safe. They don't feel that their dignities, their values as human beings can be respected or entrusted in the hands of the Nigerian government. And I believe it's only when we start to look at each of these issues and try to solve them that Nigeria can have the chance to become a better place. So yes, that's my message: human rights, human dignity, value for human life. We need to start from this this point if we want to make any progress at all as a nation.
You did a lot of research here. A lot of things happen in Nigeria that we forget. And I think that one of our biggest problems as a country is this short-term memory. These things just happen, and we make a lot of noise about them, how bad, how terrible they are, and then we just simply move on. So did you have this in mind when you were putting this book together, and when you brought in all these examples and you dug them out and pieced them together in this book?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I mean, you would not expect it, but my answer is not even research. Most of those stories, I took over 4 years to write this book. And as I was, things were happening as I was writing the book. And I was recalling some stories as well. So whenever I recall any story, I'll just say, okay, this would go under the right to life, heading or section. And I don't forget those stories. I never forgot them. Yes, I went all the way back to Mohammed Yusuf to say that the Nigerian government created, or had a hand in the creation of Boko Haram, as we got to know it later, due to his handling of Mohammed Yusuf and its extrajudicial killing. And yes, it's a very good point. We tend to forget these examples. We just live in the now, in the present. And my point was that violation of human rights just simply leads to a worse society. If you think that depriving Mohammed Yusuf of his right to life would have ended the Boko Haram problem, well, you were wrong. And you will keep to repeat these mistakes over and over again. You need to respect everyone's human rights in order to solve these problems, not to just keep on violating and violating and violating, because it never ends. It's like a slippery slope. When do you stop? At what point do you stop? So I think it's a good question. Those history, I think history is very important, in assessing Nigeria's problems and how to solve them. And that's why I went back to those stories. I thought they were important, and for me personally, I will never forget them. And I think it's important for Nigerians not to forget their history.
Interesting. You accused the Nigerian politician a lot in this book. You accused the Nigerian politician of not understanding and not appreciating human rights. And you said this manifests itself in the way they campaign for elections. It manifests itself in the way they run, government when they eventually get into power. You gave quite a number of examples from the House of Assembly, Senate levels, presidency. You gave so many examples in your book. Can you provide teasers for viewers out there, into this? What's going through your mind, and what did you write about with regards to this?
Yeah, so essentially what I try to do is, for every student of government, we know that there are three arms of government. So the executive, the legislative, and the judicial arm. And I wanted to show how each of those arms had a role to play. So for the executive, we're talking about the government, the president, the police, the organs of the executive. And we saw, how the roles they played, particularly they need to execute or, implement the laws, but sometimes we see that they don't carry out or implement the laws properly, especially if you look at the police, and, the brutality meted out on ordinary persons. Look at NSAS, etc. And the legislative arm, the Senate, the House of Representatives, even beyond the federal to the state level, are responsible for passing laws. And I did give some examples of some very bad laws that are passed by these bodies, and how they seem to be more concerned with other things than solving key problems of human rights violations in the country. And I also did touch upon the judiciary. We looked at some decisions passed, even by the Supreme Court, that were that seemed to belittle, human rights, or value other concepts like national security over human rights. So it was just important to see that the government on the one hand and the people on the other are very important in terms of working together to achieve the implementation and enforcement of human rights in the country.
Allwell, your father is famous for masob. Has that been a burden on you, either in a positive way or in a negative way? Has that been a burden, on you? And also, as a writer, the author of this book, and I know you have three other books, has that been a burden on you?
I think that's a tricky question. Firstly, growing up, it definitely was a burden in the sense that you don't get a normal childhood. If your father is a freedom fighter in a country like Nigeria, where obviously it's very difficult for the states to accommodate such opposing movements. So there are some times when we had to temporarily drop out of school because the environment was very chaotic. We had to be on the run. So yes, a burden in that sense. Obviously now, as an adult, it's a bit different. So I wouldn't see it as a burden. I see the very positive parts as well. I also see it as a blessing because it has exposed me to a lot of experiences. I've met a lot of people, and I have learned a lot of things on the way. So I see. I mean, the positives and negatives, but I like to dwell, on the positives and not so much on the negatives. So not a burden. Even if it's one that I'm happy to carry.
I'm going to finish this by reading something you wrote here in the chapter you've titled Biafra. Of course, you did say when you started this chapter that did we readers think you will ever finish this book without you talking about that? Nice one there. Okay, so here you are saying, you were talking about the desire for so many groups to have, secession. I mean, you were addressing this here. And you said, if everybody's rights were respected in Nigeria, if everyone had equal opportunity, if everyone had access to basic education and health, if everyone had food to eat, if most people were happy, if the police did not shoot people randomly, no one would agitate for Biafra or Oodua Republic. These agitations are saying one thing: we are not happy with the way things are run in Nigeria. Therefore, we want our own state. No one leaves a happy marriage. I like that. I like that.
Thank you.
Well done. So on this note, Allwell, we have to draw curtains on this interview. It's been nice chatting with you. Thank you very much for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure discussing with you, Kunle. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Very interesting perspective, human rights. When you think about it very deeply, it really does make a lot of sense. We look at everything, not having hospitals, not having roads, not having good schools. Look at everything from the perspective of human rights. A lot of things begin to make sense. So let's begin to value human life more. It's very important. A lot of problems we have in Nigeria because we do not value human life. So I was telling somebody the other day that why don't we have street lights? It's not for fancy. It's not to be fanciful, or it's not just to brighten a place for the sake of it. When you look at street lights from the perspective of safety, of human life, then it begins to have a whole new meaning. And if leaders begin to look at it from that perspective and we value human life, then a lot of things begin to change. Well, this is where we have to end the show today. As always, we'll be delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumu. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.